The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the OffRoad Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the OffRoad Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is the OffRoad Racer podcast, and I'm here with my favorite bridesmaid, Bruce Binnquist. What's up, Bruce?
Just hanging out. Thanks for having me down.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's been a year for you guys. You guys have been doing really well, but like right on the cusp of that number one plate.
Yeah, we seem to just have one extra unscheduled stop for a check or a flat or just something like that consistently, like out of the last 6 races, we've been on the podium, right? Yeah. But just haven't had that clean run yet. So we're looking forward to that. And, in some sense, it makes it fun, like having to Alan at the Mint 400 battling with Joey in the last race we were in there. He turned me loose at about the halfway point. I think I was down about 15 minutes. And pulled 12 minutes back on the third lap, and he just said, keep it ripping. So, we've got the pace, the car, the team, everyone's phenomenal. Just need that little clean run, and starting to manage the program a little bit as far as just managing the race course and our pace. But, kind of who we are and the way we've developed the technology of the race car, our unwillingness to compromise, and so that's kind of been a little bit of our R&D and motto and taking UTV racing to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a big risk, right? So, yep. And that was one of the things like I really liked about you when I met you is that, there's a lot of guys who come into the sport and they're like, they're going to buy the car that they know is winning. And that's a smart path. That's a good path for the new guys to get their feet wet and learn racecraft, but you didn't really do that. You reinvented a lot of stuff, and there's some teething with that. But, some of the stuff, let's talk about that. Like, some of the stuff on your car is, it's race car stuff. I mean, it's Formula One stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we want to talk through the revisions of what we call B1, B2, and B3, and then now looking into our B4 update, right? So those are the versions of our car. And our B1 car is what we raced. I think it was at the 2018 Mint, which was a stock platform with a tune on it and a few bolt-on parts. And we literally built it in a week and, went racing with it. And I remember going across the dry lake there at Prim and calling out to Sean, we're 98 mile an hour and he's just having a heart attack that, I'm going to die in this thing if I cartwheel it, right? So we kind of went back to the drawing board to our B2 car, which was still based on stock chassis, just with some more robust gusseting, but with some upgraded CVs, axles, parts, and that. And we raced that for a year or two as we were designing our B3 car, which is our current car that people see us racing now. So, with the pioneering and the R&D and kind of bringing my aerospace engineering background to it, we identified our strengths and weaknesses, right? Obviously, we chose the platform we did. We really liked the Rotax power plant and drivetrain of the CanAm that we had chosen, and that geometry. So when we went into B3, we scanned 10 stock chassis. Okay, stock chassis, bare frames, to understand their design tolerance of where chassis 1 through 10 was to find kind of their, to find that window to put the car in stock geometry, but have the most premier alignment and the rest of it. So that was something that was questioned a lot as we were bringing this state-of-the-art car out. And we worked directly with the tech directors in any of the series where we've raced, and we were able to share all that geometry with it. So that partnership with Sean Geiser and myself was critical because my background of running and engineering a team and multiple different engineering facets in, for that matter, different states, many states, to design the car that we're racing now. And where Sean had worked with his uncles at Geiser Brothers, they fabricate the chassis and then they build the body and systems around what that geometry of that welded structure was.
Right.
So, we kind of looked at, hey, we needed to get air to cool the belt. We needed to get air to the intercooler. We kind of prioritized from top to bottom on the design of B3. And then we just literally 3-dimensionally started building the car to within the Pro Turbo specifications.
Right.
So, it was really, as I love going racing, I love competing. As anyone knows me, I'm a competitor. If they actually know me, I'm a lot nicer than I am on race day, right?
Sure.
Where we've kind of taken that villain role a little bit. But at the end of the day, I enjoy the build process. And the build process that I don't think everyone knows was really done with our family. With Sean and I, my boys, and our composite shop, we build all our own bodies. We shaped and built all that stuff with my kit.
Yeah, nice. And it's carbon fiber. Like, that was also one of the things that I noticed right away is, you guys showed up with a lot of carbon fiber on a UTV. It was pretty stark.
Yeah, we did. We came out with a black car, and then again, that was something that we built. We built the shape of the body, keeping in mind the shape of the rear fenders of the CanAm, the rocker panel. Initially, we came out with a nose of a car that looked a little bit more like a one car, if you would.
Yep, I remember that.
And then we needed, and the rules stated we had to run the front hood scoop, and we had to run the grill, and we had to run some of the flares. So we bolted that stuff on to check those boxes.
Right.
Which was within the spirit of the rules, but ultimately, they wanted it to look like a factory Can-Am in resemblance as much as it could.
Yeah, and why? So, I kind of know the answer, I guess, but why didn't you just, go over to Lone Star and buy a race-winning chassis?
Because we knew we could build something better. And, we've shown the pace in that, right? We didn't have control to fix problems, and Dan Fisher's an awesome guy, competitor. We talked to him. No issues there. Just, I wanted to have a little bit more of that intimate relationship with the engineer and fabricator. And, like I said, it started organically with B1, and then Sean and I hit it off really well, and then we've just kind of continued to do the R&D. So the parts we're racing have become customer parts, that you can buy that are, BDI Geiser race proven stuff, and gone through those revisions as we've broken things, and that's passed on to the end user.
Right. It makes me curious too, because obviously I've known Sean through his uncles, the Geiser brothers, who've had a massively successful career building trophy trucks. I think to this date, it's the most winningest trophy truck chassis out there, right? Just pure numbers and drivability. But what made you choose Sean?
I got put in touch with a fabricator I'd worked a bunch with, just building play cars and stuff. And he said, hey, and at that point, Sean was building, a lot of the themed sand cars, right? But he had the pedigree, right? So kind of an interesting side story. I had called Sean, had looked at kind of what he had on there. It wasn't really what I was looking for, because I was more of a desert pre-run kind of, started off as a family car, but after a year, it really needed to get, a cage and arms and get some updates. And so I got put together with Sean, and I told him, look, this is what I want to do. I want to build, a chrome molly cage, missile, rod welded. I wanted to enjoy the craftsmanship of the fabrication. When I'm driving it, cleaning it, whatever, I really enjoy that stuff. I wanted to do arms. I just had a hit list. So I put it out to him, and we had never met but on the phone, right?
Nice.
And so I had my car trailered over there to Sean so that he could take a look at it. And I flew my airplane into Deer Valley, which his shop was right on Deer Valley there. And the first time I met Sean, he picked me up at the airport, right? Hop out of the airplane and, shake his hand and say, hey, let's go check this thing out, right? And so, I had the list and he knew I wanted to have it by Thanksgiving so we could use it at Thanksgiving. I think this was early October. And we're sitting in front of his shop and he goes, hey, I got to tell you, I don't think I can have it done by Thanksgiving. I said, then we're not going to the shop, turn around, take me back to my airplane. It's not going to happen. He went, well, hold on, let's talk about it, right? And I just said, listen, I'm a no BS guy. Like, this is what it is. This is what we need to make happen. Let's do this, right? So we went in and went through the shop. But I think that's when Sean kind of knew, like, okay, hey.
Yeah, this is serious. This guy's serious.
This guy's real.
It's funny. It's a thing that is throughout fabricators is they're calculating the price in their head. And then they're on top of that, they're calculating how many all-nighters they're going to have to do, right?
Totally.
It's part of the culture, man. It's like, even the people who are the most organized people that allow for, all the time in the world to do it. It's like you'll find this like crazy thing in our culture where they're like, well, I just spent, 3 days not sleeping to get something done even further beyond what was expected.
Right. So that's how our relationship started. Long story short, he got the car done. We went out. We had a great time on Thanksgiving. And then, then again, that was pre-running. It was kind of funny because he and his team had looked at my car, unbeknownst to me, had looked at my car on the hours and the distance travel and kind of did an average mile an hour. And they're like, this is real pace in a stock car. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, that's with my wife and kids riding next to me. Like, let's go build a race car. Right. So Thanksgiving, he delivered it. Well, we had between Thanksgiving and Parker, January 6th. So literally in like 7 days, we built a race car to go race Parker. And talking about sleepless nights, we had those, right? And we were sitting there on the couch after Thanksgiving go, hey, let's build a race car, right? And what's it going to take? And Sean's like, oh, I don't think we can do it. And I just said, listen, you know what? I'm the kind of guy, rather than tell me that we can't do it, let's try.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
try to do it, right? So needless to say, plenty of overnighters, split shifts, whatever. We made it happen. We went to Parker and we raced Pro Turbo in a stock car pretty much. What you would look at today, with the exception of the fuel cell, a super stock car.
Sure.
Right. And we started 72nd, which was dead last. And when we got to Midway, I think we were running 14th. So needless to say, I had the talent to drive fast enough. And at the end of the lap, I ended up having a failure, but just driving the car beyond the parts. And
sure.
We've kind of been chasing that. But on the same note, it's really helped us design a true race car.
Well, look, there's lots of other forms of racing and a lot of like details. Like when people talk about Formula One, they're like, oh, the track changes and the aero and all these things. And those are factors, but like the amount of factors in off-road is unfathomable comparatively. And especially when you're dealing with a vehicle. I don't know how many times I've sat with engineers and they're like, well, we FEA tested that. And I'm like, well, does your FEA test account for a boulder that you're going to smash into, right? That's real world stuff. Right. So, I don't think people really can grasp how difficult it is to, build a platform that can withstand, the torture that we put it through in off-road racing. And especially when you go to a lighter platform like a UTV, like it's fairly figured out at the top level in trophy truck, but even there, like you see a lot of failures with different parts, right? So yeah, again, it's just interesting that in all the things that you're doing that you took that on, you're like, well, I'm not going to take the easy way. I'm going to, build something that you believe in, that's from your brain, but, let's talk about how you got to that point, because you've had some previous experience racing. Talk about that experience.
Sure. Yeah. So, I grew up in the desert, family, kind of like a lot of people do in Southern California. We had a vacation house in Arizona. So, I'm a kid from the 70s, so I'm not a young guy. I'm out there battling with these guys. I'm 50 now, and, but at the end of the day, I grew up riding motorcycles at Parker at our vacation house, and, we didn't have side-by-sides. The Odyssey wasn't even out when I started driving in the desert. We were driving old Volkswagen bus box Burros, right?
Yep, I remember.
Yeah, so my grandpa and his buddies were the guys that ended up building those first Burros, the Mesa Burros. So I grew up in the desert doing that, and then as we got older, we were riding motorcycles as they were in buggies and whatnot. So that was kind of how my motorsports love of motorcycles and racing started. And then I moved on to race go-karts at a professional level, and have raced with Jensen Button and Fernando Alonso, Anthony Davidson. Lewis was a kid at some of the world championship stuff we were at.
That's pretty cool.
So it was pretty sick to see those guys racing F1 now at the level that they are, right?
Yeah.
So I did that for a bit, had some decent success at it as a privateer with a company here in the States, ran a factory BSE go-kart, and did a bunch of traveling. So that was super fun and learned a ton doing that. And then by that time, I was already working in the aerospace industry, as a GM of a big factory running that. So, we had moved to Northern Nevada. So then I spent a bunch of time on my free time riding motorcycles, doing some ISDE events, desert racing and that up there. So that was super fun, but then, got more serious with work, got married, had kids, and kind of put racing on the back burner a little bit.
Sure.
Started my company, but, we're commercial general contractors. But as that was, becoming more profitable, having a little bit more time, I got back into racing. I got invited to race some F2000 Formula stuff. And I think it was like on a Monday, Johnny Crean from Fleetwood Motorhomes, right? One of the sons had a car, and I got asked to race the F2000 series. So that was on a Monday. We were out testing in Buttonwillow on a Wednesday. First time ever in the car. I flew my airplane in, landed on the back straightaway. And then I was racing Friday out at Vegas. And that weekend, I ended up taking second on the weekend, first time in a Formula car. So that was fun, learning how to bang gears and dealing with an aeroed car and with a proper race engineer. And then that's just led to other Formula racing.
So what, at that moment were you like, oh shit, I can do this and this is really fun?
I never had any doubt that I could do it, right? I mean, it wasn't any form of motorsport that I haven't been super competitive at that we've gotten involved in.
Well, what I mean is there's being competitive, but then there's being, top 5, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's like one of these things where we see it in off-road where a lot of guys come to off-road and they're expecting these fantastic results out of the gate, and they spend years just getting it handed to them, figuring the puzzle out.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it definitely, I think by the end of that test session on that Wednesday, the team owner was like, oh, wow. Okay. Because I want to say within the first 5 laps, I threw the car away one time in the test session. But then again, I kind of have that tendency to take it to its limit and then have to kind of come back on myself a little bit, right? Like where people will sneak up on it, I'm a little bit like, I want to step up to that edge and maybe over.
Yeah.
And then come back on it and go, okay, this is where we need to live, right? So I think at the end of that test session, we knew we were putting in competitive time. So when we went into practice, then again, you're in a closed circuit. So you know what the lap times are. You're kind of seeing guys' hands. You're kind of already sizing people up in that. Where in off-road, we don't really get to do that, especially with someone new, unless if there's qualifying, they may show their hand a little bit or whatever. But we knew we would be competitive. Like I said, I qualified. I think I qualified third quick, and then ended up finishing second on the weekend. But so that was kind of fun. But we knew we'd be competitive. I had a great team behind me on getting me on the car set up. I had awesome chemistry with the crew chief, which I think is super important in any form of racing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that experience, even from that first one, and then we went on to race Formula Renaults and Star Formula Mazda and some other opportunities, which are, crazy stories in themselves. But, that chemistry between talking with the race engineer and or the engineer of designing and building your car, and especially in a formula car where you have tire pressure, grip, you have aero, you have mechanical grip, you have all these things going on, being able to say that you need a 10% more aero and they give you the right wing adjustment, and being able to be on that same page is really, really important. So that's translated over to the design of our off-road cars, and having a racing acumen and being able to talk the engineering language and then be able to design that car. So that's something that I think is one of my personal strengths. And if you look at, a Michael Schumacher, he was an engineering mind, but also a racing driver.
Right.
So that's really, I think, important in developing a car.
Sure. When you look at the history of off-road and who some of the best drivers are, even in modern day, Robbie Gordon, right? Right. Part of the reason he's so good is he knows exactly how hard he could push that car.
Right.
Before him, the Mickey Thompsons and so on and so forth, all the different builders that were successful racers, same thing. So yeah, that's really cool. Again, it was really interesting to see you guys show up and then very quickly evolve, right? It was like, okay, I remember our tech director, Bill Savage, was pretty worked up about the carbon fiber in particular, because, there's different processes of carbon fiber, and some of it is flammable, some of it is not, right? So these guys show up, in the past, there's guys who've shown up with carbon fiber that's the cheap stuff, and it's like, dude, that's just a bonfire waiting to happen. Yeah. But, and that really drew me into looking at the vehicle you guys had built. Visually, it's a race car. It very much emulates a Formula One car or an Indy car in its design and its stance and everything, which I think is really cool. It's one thing that I don't think people correlate enough, is that in the early days of especially guys like Mickey Thompson, he was building desert cars based on his IndyCar knowledge, right, and vice versa. So there is a very direct correlation there. Yeah, no, for sure there is. So, talking about the composites, then again, that was my aerospace background. So, in my early 20s and even late high school, I was working at my buddy's dad's aerospace company, and all of our stuff is all pre-impregnated carbon fiber. So I literally get the remnants from SpaceX. And that's what we're building a lot of our, building all of our body parts out of. And that's a high, it is pretty rad, right? It's like I got Elon scraps, literally. And what's even better is I get it from my buddy Justin Gurney, right? All American racer. So it's, for the Gurney family.
From the Gurney family, yeah. So that's
anybody listening to this, go Google Dan Gurney, right?
Exactly. The Gurney flap, Indy, F1, you name it. But
he was actually, his dad was responsible for the first champagne spray.
100%. And I've held that bottle, right? Which is super cool. So like with my kids, as they've grown up and they're like, Dad, what are you doing? We're working 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day building this body because we got a deadline, right?
Right.
And designing it. And I said, boys, come with me. So we went up to All American Racer and met Justin. I said, let me show you something. We walk in their conference room, and if anyone's been there, it's a phenomenal piece of motorsports history. You walk down the hallway and the photos, and it just puts goosebumps on your body if you're a motorsports guy, of Dan and everything that he's accomplished in racing. And we walk in the conference room, and I said, see that right there? And it's lit up in its case, and it's the first champagne bottle that was ever sprayed at Le Mans. Yeah. I said, that's what we're doing.
It's such a cool story because, the way I had heard it, and this came from really, I think, Butch Arciero, was that, he did it in protest, and they was like trying to give them the middle finger of like, see, an American can win,
Right. No, it's super cool. So then that kind of spawned to the kids to where they're watching Ford versus Ferrari.
Right.
And obviously Dan was a part of that as well. And when you look at that, it's grassroots like off-road is, right? And, the misunderstanding of maybe us and our team is we really are grassroots.
Sure.
I mean, it's a team full of volunteers. Right. And family for that matter. I mean, we vacation together, we stay together, we eat together, we pray before the races together, it's just, it's truly a family environment. But as the boys and I were building this thing, I wanted to show them the Gurney family and what was going on. They watch Ford versus Ferrari. They're like, Dad, they built their Eagle F1 car in Santa Ana. We're building our carbon fiber state-of-the-art car here at John Wayne Airport, right, is where our office is.
Right.
And he's going, we're fording new grounds. And these kids finally grasped it when they could see the history of all-American racers, could see Ford versus Ferrari, and then what my vision was to designing and building the car and changing off-road racing, the pace. Let's change the pace. Of where we're going.
What a powerful thing to share with your kids.
Yeah.
That's super cool. We need more of that in this country.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's been kind of, a fun part of it is, and then from that standpoint, it's not just Sean, like KWI, Chris Worth, he does all the clutching on CanAm stuff, aftermarket parts and whatnot. When he got involved with our team and saw my engineering mind, my testing and what was going on, he bought all in. So there's, been a lot of these aftermarket companies that have supported us and our team, Gates, KWI, King, to where we've developed stuff around our platform. And then it's ultimately is, there for the end user on the retail market. So, that's been a fun process for me. And I think when people see how committed we are to, to our program, our professionalism, to how we look, how, our pit setup is, how, like you said, hey, who are these guys, right?
Well,
when we came on the scene.
It's funny. I'm going to compare you to, back in the day with Alan Pfluger. Alan Pfluger was, one of the, I guess I would call him a pioneer in marketing, right? He showed up in an era where there wasn't factory support, and they showed up, and they looked like a factory. All of his dudes that were in, uniform look, and his car and hauler, everything looked pro. And, he had good results as well. He was a hell of a driver, but that attracted higher levels of sponsorship. And that's one thing, I talk about this a lot, and, there's a lot of things racers can't afford, and they can't, they just can't do. But the way you show up to the track is important. The way you look online is important. You're not gonna. It's like dating. You're not gonna get the right woman if you look like a bum. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's one of those things too. I'm happy when I see teams like you guys take it seriously, because it's ultimately how we elevate our sport.
Right.
I have no doubt that you guys are going to end up with a significant sponsorship, because when when I get the calls, and they say, hey, who should we support? You are one of those top teams that I refer to. But also, when endemic and non-endemic brands are looking around and they're like, okay, yeah, of course, everybody wants money to go racing. That's a given. But where's my money best spent? Where does it tell the story of our brand, and especially when we talk about, the performance of off-road racing and the products that we create, and the fact that, you guys are, partners, both yourself and your partners are creating products that people can buy. That is of the utmost importance. That's where the phrase is, race on Sunday, buy on Monday, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yep. And that's been a really, really important thing to me, is when these people have volunteered their time and come in and aligned with us on the design engineering of it, is for me to create that value and beyond. Right? Like, I want an equitable relationship. They're giving up their time. They're traveling across the United States. And we have people flying in from all over the place to attend each race. And, so with that commitment to us comes the commitment from me into developing the absolute best product that we can then bring to the end user. And, we've got some really neat, exciting things that we're going to debut at our next race here. And then bringing it to California 300 on the clutching side of things that we can't really talk about right now. But it'll be available come this dune season and desert season. And we're currently actually testing it right now as we're sitting here doing this recording.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, let's talk about the CanAm platform in particular, because, right now in Pro Turbo and really overall, it's been dominating, between, what you guys have built, a few other guys, and of course, Phil Blurton. He's just been ravaging,
Absolutely.
The UTVs. And it's interesting because, we know that they have a new car coming. It's exciting, and, we've heard a bunch of rumors that, is it going to be a bigger car? Is it going to fit within the 1,000cc class? So, we'll see, but I'm sure it's going to be rad, because their platform is, for racing in particular, is really unbelievable.
No, it's, we are a non-factory, non-supported team outside of our group, right? Meaning Geiser and all the other aftermarket companies that are supporting us. So, we could choose to race whatever platform we want. And like I said in the beginning, we chose CanAm and the BRP platform because of that Rotax power plant and that. And it will be interesting to see what they come out with. Like you said, there's lots of rumors. I know they're building a more robust, bigger car, bigger parts, arms, geometry, suspension. It does sound like there's two versions coming, but it's speculation, like you said.
Yeah.
But, I think you're going to see a compliant 1,000cc car first, and then you'll probably see a bigger platform behind that.
Which is, I love this. This is one of my favorite things about this culture, is this evolution of technology. And now we've entered this threshold where you can go to the dealership and buy these things. These are crazy capable cars, especially for, the average guy who's going to go out and just cruise around with his family. I mean, I'm, just besides myself with, with happiness that I can just bring people and stick them in cars and go like, you see what I'm talking about?
Right.
It's like selling
very
drugs.
capable. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and I've done it, and I should have a dealership at this point, because I've done it to like a couple hundred people. Just come ride with me. I don't have to say anything. You get in it, the smile comes out, and, and then people start doing the math backwards, and they're like, oh shit, it's not the car, it's the trailer and the truck, and I'm probably going to have to get a different house, know what I mean, to store all my stuff at.
Right.
But it's a good problem, and I love sharing it with people. So no, I'm excited, and, our numbers in the UTV class just keep increasing, which is, a tremendous thing. And, I think we have a very bright future between, all the racers like yourself, and then a lot of the young people coming in with youth racing. I've been hearing some rumors of some new manufacturers getting into the youth side, which is cool.
Definitely.
We want that competition, and we want to grow youth UTV racing. So it's really cool. Yeah. So, your sons now, they're hands-on the program. I mean, what's that like for you, having your sons involved?
It's a bit emotional for me to talk about, to be honest with you. Commitment of those young kids And like you had noted on the fact that we've spent a tremendous amount of time developing and building our car, body, and whatnot, showed the dedication they have
Right.
and the commitment to it at a young age out of kids that are 20 and 22. That just doesn't happen nowadays.
No, most kids at that age are not hanging out with their parents.
Totally. And not learning high-tech engineering, processing. And now I literally can turn over building a composite car to my oldest son, and he takes it from A to Z. So from that standpoint, the amount of time I've had with them developing and doing that part of the process is really fun. And they've also been a part of running our pits, our strategy. I mean, even at the Mint, Riley was going back and forth between Tirana's pit and our pit, strategizing. I remember the first Laughlin Tirana came to, Riley was over there helping them make pit calls.
Right.
And Riley's my oldest son. And so from that standpoint, it's super cool, those family environments, right? And the amount of time that we've got to spend doing it. Riley started racing a little bit. He won the UTV World Championships at Havasu in the rally class with Barrett. And so it's neat to see that. It's, I think, especially great for him to see the build process, the prep process, how it works behind the scenes and the strategy and the logistics of it. So when he gets in a race car, he's able to communicate correctly too. So there is a next generation BDI plan, you know, and then I'll be more valuable to them when I'm on that pit side as well. Coming out of the race car when that time comes. But it's kind of the joke in our pit. It's like, hey, when you're faster than your dad, then you get the seat. Until then, forget it. It's mine.
I love that. But it's a thing too that also speaks to what we are as Americans, right? And like the fact that we've lost this idea that not just we're I don't know how to explain this without sounding like a dick, but we're the best, right? And that comes from a sense of, we concept things, our intellectual property is unparalleled. And we've kind of lost that a little bit. And then this idea that, we've got to send stuff to China, or we've got to send stuff. No, we can make it right here with our own mind and our hands. And sure, maybe it gets manufactured someplace else when you're doing mass production, but like that's what built hot rod culture, which innately affected automotive culture, which also was, where off-road culture came from, was aerospace engineers and just guys who wanted to build something cooler and faster in their garage. And, all pretty much happened here in Southern California.
Absolutely.
And so it's cool to see that pass on to this next generation, because when guys like Nye Frank and, what have you pass away, all these legends that, it's a lost art of like, and they did it with a pencil and a pad and rolled their own metal, and they didn't have the computer assist that we have now, which makes us even more powerful, right? So I think that's a really cool thing and a tenement of our culture, and important to share it forward so that we continue to do it here in Southern California, and continue to innovate, because it's really easy for me to look at modern vehicles like the Raptor, the Jeeps, etc., and even the new Bronco, and go, oh, I know where that came from. I know the guy who concepted that, right? Internal bypass shocks with John Marking, and wheel size, just all of it. So it's really cool for me. But I it's cool you're sharing that and installing that with your sons, because that'll live on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my grandpa brought us out to the desert out at Parker, and that's where it started. And then my dad and uncles, and I probably would have been involved in racing a little bit earlier if my grandma didn't rein everyone in and go, he's going to kill himself, he's crazy, because I just go for it, right? But, you kind of mentioned something about the impact taking someone for a ride in a showroom car or a stock car. Us taking that showroom UTV platform, I think we've pioneered some kind of neat waters with our car and our platform and even our mindset, right, of where we're going with this car. We went and entered the trophy trucker class 1 class.
That's right.
Right. And we went out there and we qualified 4th quick out of everyone qualifying, meaning I was 4th off behind 3 trophy trucks. And Mitchie did that with me. You know, I'd kind of started planning it a year before, and then Mitchie got on, which was super cool. But, you know, it does show, and this was over a year ago, you know, and the pace has gone up since then. We've made improvements, you know, there's like just incrementally. So, you know, as CanAm, Razor, you know, speed comes on, all, you know, and hopefully to see, you know, Kawasaki, Honda, the rest of these joining that pro ranking of the UTVs, you know, the gaps are getting closer.
Yeah.
You know, at the last Met, I think Joey and I were like 10th and 11th overall on time.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that stuff, I mean, the showroom capable cars are very capable. Then we turn them into race cars respecting the stock geometry. You know, it's super neat. But, you know, then again, we've had a little bit of a shakeup with the pro classes dividing and some of that talent going, you know, towards that Pro R platform and then people staying in Pro Turbo. And I really think there's a need for that pro class to come back together. And that's going to be interesting to see where the sanctioning bodies and the promoters go in trying to prevent that, because rather than separating the manufacturers, I want to see all the manufacturers go factory racing.
Racing against your dad is something that 90% of the racers in the world will never get.
I've accomplished everything I wanted to do, and now he's just like taking the reins. I want to be remembered for being a huge part of short course, not just racing, keeping it alive, helping it grow. If it comes down to the last weekend and I'm in it, the boys better watch out.
Listen, I pretty much agree that the challenge is obviously the Pro R's scale, right? Scale of the engine, etc. And you know, like we were talking about earlier, that platform isn't quite figured out. So the Can-Ams are still winning, you know. But it's going to be an interesting evolution because to me, you know, you have your class wins, but we definitely are looking at the overall UTV win. And, you know, I could tell you like one of the high points of discussion in our organization and Unlimited Off-Road Racing is that, you know, we want that, right? And so we're making sure that the UTVs race on their own. You know, they don't have interference with lap vehicles. We're trying to accomplish that where we can. And then the 10 cars are the racing with the 10 cars, not with the UTVs. It's a different class. And so, you know, it's interesting because you can always go down to this purest form of racing, which is a spec class, right? But that kills innovation. So It's this balance of like, you know, that I believe is our strength as a culture, is that we are the only true unlimited form of racing. Now, at the highest level at Trophy Truck, we're already seeing pretty exorbitant spends, right? But that has more of an advantage in Baja than it does in the state races because of pre-running and, you know, a couple other things. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how everything evolves, right? And to be honest, like, it's exciting. It's going to be fun, you know?
For sure. Well, and it's interesting because, you know, I talked to all the competitors in our UTV stuff, right? And I was talking to Phil yesterday and Vito and, you know, I mean, we talked to Brandon Sims and you name it, you know, right on down to I'll talk to, you know, the privateer guys just coming in. People DM me and, you know, we get back to them and try and point them the right direction. But we all really would like that talent to come back together so that we all get to go slug it out. Because at the end of the day, I mean, this thing is a fight. I mean, like you had mentioned earlier, it's one thing to survive the desert because that's the ultimate competitor. And, you know, there's a saying, the desert always wins, right? And so you're managing that, right? You're managing equipment and then you're racing. So we would really like to see the pro level teams, the pro guys all come together in one class. And I think it's important to do that. So I've put a bunch of time into discussion. I know taking the temperature of the guys that are racing, the race teams and that. And I think that it's really would launch our UTV racing platform to be more mainstream, doing that with, live broadcast and streaming and in-car. We've pioneered a lot of that stuff.
Sure. No, I think there's a lot to be said for that. The other component, though, that we always take into consideration is, all the guys who aren't fast, right? And they look at it and they go, okay, like it's happening in trophy truck in Baja in particular. It's like you have to be really good. You have to be really well funded. Or besides that, you have to get lucky and everybody else has to have issues, right?
Sure.
And so then that shapes the landscape where, guys who don't have that level of funding in particular look at it and they're like, man, there's no way, right? And I think that that's one of the things about our sport that makes it magical is that, you can be some broke dick kid from El Cajon, like I was, and you could still go racing and you can work your way up and do pretty well. Now, are you going to be racing at the top level of trophy trucks? Maybe not, but there's still a shot.
Yeah. No, I get it. And, then again, we're self-engineered, self-funded, and a volunteer team, so, that shows it. We've put a tremendous amount of time into the testing and the R&D and really just my vision of where we wanted to take it to be that leading edge technology. And, we've done tons of data acquisition on studying belt slip and cooling and understanding what we needed to address in a racing platform.
Sure.
So that level of commitment, not just to how we look, the way the car is built, right on down to every little detail in the pit and logistics, I think is important to get consistent results. So
not only that, but it's important for everybody else to realize that, and start stepping up and emulating,
absolutely.
Because that's what makes it a professional sport is not one team, but 20, 30, 50, 100, all looking that way and acting that way. And to your point, and this is the thing, one of the things that I respect about you is that commitment. That to me is part of what this is all about is, the what we call racecraft. It's not one thing, it's everything.
Right.
It's that entire thing. You just got to drive an SST truck at Long Beach. Tell me about that. It looked fun.
I did. So it was kind of an interesting how it happened. I got a call from Robbie and he wanted me to come drive the new Speed. So I went out to Dave Cole's compound and we went out and drove it and, had a great time with Max and Robbie and all the engineers. And that was super neat. And man, what a great stock platform that thing is right out of the box. It was pretty impressive.
Well, Robbie knows car builds for sure.
Well, and it was exactly what you would expect from Robbie Gordon, right?
Yeah.
Like the chassis, the handling, the suspension, it was just like, it wasn't like another UTV, which is what you would expect. And this was after King of the Hammers. So we were running the new gearbox that, they had some engineering stuff they needed to build a more robust casting and we couldn't break it. We played in the rock for 2-3 days and that was fun. So Rob said, hey, I hadn't really thought about it, but you need to come play SST with us. Right. And I said, yeah, I'm into it. Cool. I don't know anything about it, but sounds kind of fun to me. Right. So we kind of, talked about it there and then he said, hey, come back to Charlotte. Long Beach is coming up. Why don't you come race there? And I say, that's cool. It sounds great. Let's figure it out. So I was able to, work with a bunch of our people that are supporting us now. We were able to make sure we raised the capital, get them on the truck and get them in front of 1 million people, and the weekend at Long Beach. It's kind of a big platform.
It's a huge platform. What I love about it is like Long Beach is cool, but when you see those trucks jumping, it steals the show.
100%. When you've got the polished formula, IndyCar, and then you've got the SSTs. It's kind of like you let the animals out of the cage,
right?
It really is. So it was interesting. I went back and drove and tested it, and seemed to get up to speed fairly decently, on a small track there at his shop. So you don't really get you hit some of the jumps, but there definitely a learning curve to technique on how you drive those cars. So we ended up going to Long Beach, just had a couple test sessions back there driving it. And I struggled a little bit with getting the car turn in one direction than the other. But it's more of a technique in those cars. There's a lot of roll in them. Three-wheeling's the fast way around. But we had a great time, and I can tell you what, hitting those jumps at 100 miles an hour, and you're 15, 20 feet in there. My eyes are looking over the grandstand at the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is no joke.
Yeah, it was pretty radical to see, like, they have the fencing, and you guys were higher than the fencing. Yeah. And I was like, man, I hope the safety people don't look at that, right?
Yeah, and if you look at our Instagram, I mean, it was funny. The first day in qualifying, I got around pretty good. I was like sixth quick. And then my kids gave me a hard time on Friday night. They're like, Dad, you're not sending it big enough off the jumps, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll send it tomorrow, right? On race day on Saturday. We race Saturday and Sunday. And so we get ripping around. I started, I think, third the first day. I got a little help into the wall there. So I had to come from the back of the field.
There's some touching.
Yeah, there's definitely, it self-regulates, as they like to say, right?
Yeah.
So given the next race we're in SST, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have some regulation coming, tax man's coming.
Yeah, no, it was really cool to see. I love the fact that Robbie invites racers to come crossover and do that. And, the SST has great visibility. Every time they do an event, I get a bunch of phone calls. Hey, I want to do that. Can I buy a truck? And I'm like, you can't buy that one, but you can talk to these guys and come into the desert. So it's cool. I'm stoked he's doing that. You and I have talked a lot over the year, and one of the things is the points series, the Unlimited, the Cup. Talk a little bit about how excited you are about that, and this year and going into next year.
Yeah, I mean, this year, it's always important for me. It's like, I'm a racer, by heart, right? Like at the end of the day, the lid goes on, we're going racing, right? That we call that our attitude. Before that, everything's fine, right? But the second that lid goes on, we're there for one reason. I'm there committed, like we talked about, to win the race.
Right.
And that is the goal. We've raced with you guys since my very first races with the Mint and World Championships and whatnot, and California 300. But it's important to be, for sponsors, for us to be in a points race,
Sure.
to show the consistency. And, it seems like here in the States, we're kind of picking those big races to go to that are notable as of late. And I think it's neat to see this year that, the Triple Crown coming together with King of the Hammers, Mint 400, and now the California 300, and making that actually a series, right?
Yeah.
So, and was really needed this year just because we had some of the other promoters not be able to hold the races. And, for me, I've raced motorcycles in Mexico, but the amount of time and logistics and funding that it takes, a big commitment to go race Mexico. So it was good to have that, that availability this year to do that. We struggled a little bit at King of Hammers, the opening round, but, they say you win championships on your worst days, not on your best days.
100%.
And, in qualifying, I had the car turn off 3 times on me on the prologue. And then just pushing after that, I ended up blowing a belt, which was stupid. I shouldn't have done it, but, trying to save something out of it. So it put us back on our heels a little bit going into that race.
Right.
And I went out swinging right away like I usually do. I come out pretty solid. And I ended up losing our alternator, and we run an electric hydraulic power steering with our deal. So I lost that at race mile 28.
Oh.
So I had to race, another 170 miles
with no power steering.
With no power steering.
Talk
and
about arm
ended
pump.
up second.
Nice.
So, I can tell you, I saw my maker a couple times that day, because you can't manipulate the car without that assistance.
And it sucks because like your brain is telling you what to do, and you're trying to muscle the car, and you're like, okay, shit, I can't make that corner, or I can't miss that rock. It's super frustrating.
Yeah, no, it was. On the same note, there was a big learning experience there for me too.
Yeah.
On the standpoint was I wasn't able to perform out of what the car's capable and what I'm capable of. And sometimes I'm more capable than the car is,
Sure.
right? So talking about managing equipment, managing the terrain that you're racing on. So it was good to see that, I was wounded for, 3/4 of the race, and we were still able to, be second. And that, salvaged being in the points there for us in the Triple Crown, and kind of, kicked it off that way. So from that standpoint, it was about me managing myself and the equipment and go racing. And I think I showed that at the Met,
Definitely.
where, the Met, we weren't perfect either. I mean, I had,
no, but it came down to the very end. It was like one of those super exciting races where we're looking at everything. Throughout the day, I'm getting time splits fed to me, and, looking at tracking, and I'm like, that was one where, of course, I knew who Tirana was. I didn't expect him to win this race. 100%. I did not expect him to win the race. I thought, just racecraft alone, I thought, experience was going to win out. You guys were going to, come in and pull it off.
Well, it was interesting. I mean, and we ended up ultimately giving that race away, even though Joey led a bunch there in the beginning. The first lap we were ahead on time, but coming into the solar field just before that, I made a mistake.
Right.
Just like I own it. There's enough cameras everywhere. In my whole racing career, formula or not, data acquisition, cameras, none of it lies. Like I made a mistake. I ended up coming down the hill there, got in a corner that I didn't have a good course note in. I ended up smoking a rock. Meaning I just drove it off track, because trying to make the corner, I would have definitely thrown the car away.
Right.
So it was interesting. We were changing the flat, and Radfab, my navigator, which, then again, talking about guys that are critical to your team. I mean, he's my right hand, right? And he got out, changed the tire, and no one passed us. That's where we were in the deal. And, it takes a couple minutes to change the tire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so we get back in, and I'm like, this is a long race. We're just completing the first lap. Let's just go to work. We came in, and I think we ran about 5th or 6th on that first lap, but I think we were sitting in pretty good shape prior to that. And then we went back out, and I ended up blowing a belt with the belt not even hot. So at some point I had compromised the belt, whether it was the start of the race or whatnot. And then a bunch of people got by us. Dustin Jones got by us. And,
that's such heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I just started going backwards. And that's where the experience came in, where I just went, hey, this is a long race.
Yeah,
there's a lot to happen. I know I have the pace.
Yeah.
So we just went right back onto what our race plan and what our pace was. And then we ended up, that was the second lap. We kind of just, we made up a little bit of time there. And that's when I came into the pit, and Alan Rudd, that was running our pit, he said, okay, it's time to turn Brucifer loose. Engage.
Brucifer, I love that, right?
Yeah, that's what he was like, turn it loose, let's go. I said, aye, Captain, time to go. So, I was managing myself those first 2 laps, and had a couple problems. So we went out on that third lap, and that's where I think we pulled back 12 minutes, 38 seconds on Joey.
Right.
And we made a bunch of passes, and, it was on the camera, and I didn't bump anyone all day. Right.
It was all clean.
Like patient, clean, getting by them. And that's the thing, is when we're racing with those pro guys, everyone respects each other. I mean, if
Sure.
you do it, where I think some of the inexperienced guys aren't doing that, but, we battled hard through that third lap when we came in, and in our fuel stop, and Alan said, okay, you just made up 12 minutes and 38 seconds. It's go time, and we were like, I think at that point I was maybe 2 minutes off of Joey, and we pushed hard on that first part of the lap. And before we got to Gonzo, I'd gotten by Mitchie, And, he came up on him. He got over right away. And we were kind of going into that rock garden section there before we get in the sand bumps. And I told Radfab, I said, hey, I'm going to take it easy here. I don't want a flat. We'd pushed through here, got lucky. And of course, here I am managing the car, managing the terrain. And I ended up getting a flat, just a rock hooked to the inside wheel. So I said, hey, we've got a left rear flat, we got to pull over and change this thing. So I said, I'm not pulling far off the course. So I wanted to see them that were pulled over because we had passed who we were racing. And I didn't want them to keep pushing. I wanted them to see that we were hurt.
Right.
So, just having that, thought process, that strategy into it, to letting them see you there so that they're not going to push. Those are important things.
Sure.
He got out, did a great tire change, got back in the car. At that point, Mitchie had gone by, Tirana had gone by. And we knew we had started ahead of Joey. We knew we needed to pass him to win the thing. So we got ripping again, and we went into the pit. And prior to getting to Gonzo pit, we're like, are we going to re-rack a tire or not? And I'm like, well, we practiced a bunch the night before. We knew it was a 17-second to re-rack a tire. We have to do it. Right? Just have to do it. It's the Mint 400. Chances of a flat are high.
Yeah. Especially, so this is last lap.
Last lap. And if he gets a flat, he's going to be down. If we get one, whatever, So I'm like, we have to take the medicine. So we pull in, the guys re-rack a tire for us. And I'm going up Gonzo and I see Mitchie pulled over in his pit. I'm like, okay, that's a free buy. And we left Gonzo and we get going. And it rained, so there was no dust, no reed. So I'm pushing pretty hard going up that section there. And we come up on Joey, and I said, it's go time, right? To Radfab. I said, no horn, no siren. We're going racing. And we came in on Joey. Obviously, my car's pretty loud. He heard us coming. And he started to jackrab on us. So I bumped him once, like, hey, I'm here. Are you going to let me by or not? And he jackrabbed a little bit. And I said, Radfab, hang on. And I just buried the throttle and used him as a berm in the next corner. Hit him like I meant it. Right. Pushed him over the corner. And that was the first time we went steel to steel with anyone all day.
Right.
But, that's the way I think we've got to race. It's like
in that situation. 100%. I mean, that's why that's why we allow it, right? Yeah. Is that that's part of the culture, that's part of our sport, and you give them the opportunity to be polite about it, and then it's on.
If they choose to squeeze on the throttle and not get over,
this is a contact sport.
Well, it is a little bit, and like I said, talking about the respect of it is, when I come up on Phil or Mitchie or those guys, they come up on them before I even hit them. They'll tap their brakes really quick. And they'll get, and then I know they're looking for somewhere to get over.
Sure,
it's kind of our unwritten code. Like, hey, we're acknowledging we're going to get over.
Yep.
Right. But Joey and I were racing, so good on him. He wanted to go do it.
This is for the overall UTV win of the Mid 400. I literally
just slung the gloves off and said, "All right, let's go." Right. Like I've lived my life for these moments. Right.
100%.
And so I gave him a good one, but didn't take him out. To the rear bumper and pushed him over the berm. And then after that, I just dropped the hammer and I said, Radfab, hang on. And at this point, there was a lot of chatter bump, We've rattled around for, I think we had 30 miles to go. And so I just put the hammer down and went for it. We had to pass, a couple of the slower classes and whatnot. And that was tough because I needed to push because I needed to make up 3 minutes. And we were on the chip for sure. And so we kept ripping and it gapped Joey pretty good as talking to Joey and Jason Montez after the race. And we ended up finishing 73 seconds behind Joey, second overall, second pro turbo and second overall. So we beat all the pro R's. Yeah. I was the second overall finisher. And that 73 seconds. So it was one of our flats, a belt. We came in to check an alternator belt at 1 second that would have made that 73 seconds. Like you relive the race after the race of going, how did I give another win away?
Sure.
I mean, this is like you opened up the podcast, The Bridesmaid.
Yeah.
I've got 5 or 6 seconds, and I mean, that's great consistency. It's great for the points racing. And at my birthday, we had the whole team together. We all went to Kona fishing, right? Like they were over there, and Chris Worth with KWI Clutch and his wife got me a wallet, credit card holder, and it's a Louis Vuitton wallet, and it's got a 2 on it. And they knew how to motivate me, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to have this next year. It's going to have a number 1 on
100%.
it, you know, because like I'm not here for second. You know, you're the first loser if it's second. You know, but that's the fun of it. So you know, after the finish of the Mint and that battle with Joey, you know, he got out of the car and you know, I gave him a hug and you know, shook his hand and just said, hey, sorry I had to smash you. He goes, nope, that was awesome. I loved it. You know, and he goes, dude, we tried to hang with you, but holy smokes, I couldn't believe how you laid it down. You know. So that's what it's about, you know, is that,
absolutely.
And like I said, you know, Riley on our team and Alan over with the Tiranas and, you know, that family team environment, working, pitting next to each other and that camaraderie, because, you know, then again, we're all out there racing, but, you know, we all care about each other. We're all really friends, you know, off the track.
Yeah, it's a family.
It really is. You know, like I said, I mean, I'm talking to Phil and Dustin Jones was FaceTiming me from back in Oklahoma this last weekend. So,
nice.
You know, we have a good time together and we're all there to get that W.
Well, I have no doubt at all that you're going to be on that number 1 podium soon. I'm looking forward to spraying some champagne with you. Thank you for taking the time to do this podcast with me, and we'll see you in the dirt.
Yeah, it sounds good, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, bye.